Waiting for the voice to vote.
You are now live on Channel 8 and YouTube.
Good afternoon. It is 3:30, December 15th, 2021. I'm the Capital Improvements Committee Chair, Tim Toth, calling our business meeting to order. Would all please rise, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. We do have a quorum for today's meeting. I am aware that Cheryl Richardson is not able to join us this afternoon. And I also understand Mrs. Bartolomeo has resigned from the advisory committee, which in turn moves her from this committee as well. I do want to thank Beverly for her service to the town, and we certainly will miss her. Okay, we have in front of us the meeting agenda, which was duly posted within the 48 hours to meet the open meeting law requirements. And our first order of business is to look at and approve our meeting minutes from our last meeting, Wednesday, December 8th.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Graves.
I would make a motion to accept the meeting minutes of Wednesday, December 8th, 2021 as presented with the amendment that the meeting adjourned at 4:26 p.m. On the minutes, it says 4:12, but we actually adjourned at 4:26. Yeah.
Duly noted. Thank you.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussions on the meeting minutes? Thank you for the correction, Mr. Graves. Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you for that. We do have a couple late requests that came in no particular order. A request from the DPW Building and Grounds for the senior center kitchen, and a request from the sewer department for a sewer roof. Mr. Zosik's not able to join us this afternoon, but Mr. LaMontagne, our town administrator, will be presenting on his behalf. Mr. LaMontagne, welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you. Okay, I believe all of you have Mr. Sozik's request for the senior center kitchen. What happened here, I think Mr. Sozik was so focused on the roof, getting that resolved, that this was missed. Right now you see for the cost to be determined, because right now we have the architect reviewing the roof as well as the kitchen. And until the specifications, the cost estimate and the plan is drawn up, we will not receive that number until that point. We do, because we do believe that this will be an alternative source of funding. I remember a while back when there was fundraisers for the kitchen to the Friends of the Templeton Elders. This is an account outside of the town's control, if you will, but I do intend to reach out to the Templeton Friends of Elders for them to support this project. Once we do receive the cost estimate and the plan, proceed forward and get this done. Outside of that, that's really all I have on the kitchen. But I do intend to move this project forward with alternative funding outside of taxation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that. And I'm sure as the architect is going through this, we'll make sure that we meet all the requirements for a commercial grade kitchen, ADA compliance, et cetera, et cetera. I fully anticipate that will come to fruition for us. Any questions for Mr. Valentine? No, no questions here either. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chairman.
I particularly enjoy the fact that it can quite possibly come out of funds other than taxation.
Absolutely. And that this, hopefully the whole senior center will be complete, and we can say that's another thing that was accomplished. One can only hope, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Aldrich, presentation from the sewer department. Good afternoon, sir.
So the sewer commission decided they wanted to look at our roof. For as long as I've been there. So we're gonna have the architect. See what they're using. We have them look at it, that'll come out of our budget. And then same thing with the price to be determined, you don't know. Basically just pursue.
Who is the architect?
Architect, Andrew Canada, the town's been using.
Same gentleman that's been working with us on Scout Hall and a couple other projects.
Been trying to be patched and fixed 4,000 times.
Completely understand, and as in the mad rush to get things together, it's not uncommon to have something get overlooked as an oversight, and we were still able to get it in. Again, this is particularly interesting that we have a potential for funding and sourcing this outside of the taxpayer dollars. Retained earnings, outstanding.
So there'll be enough in the retained earnings for this and the other projects that you guys
Oh, yeah.
put forward with the retained earnings.
Yeah.
Any further questions for Mr. Roberts? I have none. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for coming in. Next up, final recommendations, any additional discussions as we formulate our report? I will start off with just a comment. I blew up the spreadsheet that we had in the last meeting, and I'm in the process of rebuilding that. So I do not have a draft available for you to review tonight. We'll discuss an option as we near the end of the meeting, how we can get that done prior to our next meeting, which is the presentation to the select board on the 22nd of December. So I do have a question for Mr. Graves. Were you able to update the spreadsheet with the additional column?
Oh, it's been updated
Okay.
yeah, it's in the shared folder, everything is, it's with the, and with, not with the mention of the sewer roof replacement, but it does, I think the senior center kitchen was mentioned in that version of it as well. So.
Very good.
So how would you like to move forward with recommendations, Mr. Chairman? Get this kind of put to bed here, so we don't have to keep coming back for
Yes.
no meetings.
Well, what I'm hoping to do is be able to get my draft finalized. We may have to look at meeting half an hour prior to the meeting with the select board and the advice at 6:30, so possibly 6 p.m. on the 22nd, so we can just vote and put it forward. Otherwise, we present it in a draft form. So some of the things that I've been able to pick up on in the last 2 days, there has been a lot of email traffic flying back and forth. ARPA funds, our favorite interesting topic. There are some additional funds that have been earmarked from the federal level. We don't yet have the dollar amount, surprise. And we don't yet know how that will trickle down through the state on top of the round that's currently awaiting the governor's signature. So we may have other ample opportunities to go outside of direct taxpayer funds to fund some, if not all of these projects. But again, that is a very highly mobile and moving target, and I don't have the answer how that's going to align for us.
Oh, yeah, but I don't think we're gonna have the answer to that before we need to get our recommendations move forward. So I think I think we should still try to look to recommending how we want to at least spend the 190. Because that way the rest of the projects, whether it's gonna be difficult to have a meeting half hour before.
Yes.
If all of a sudden you got discussion for 45 minutes, the select board probably isn't gonna be too thrilled that we sit there and bog down their meeting.
No, that's a very busy night. as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure that at that point, getting close to the holidays and that, I know I mean, it's pretty much, other than Cheryl, depending on when she can be here, it's only gonna be the three of us anyway, so
Yep.
we're sitting here, I mean, we might as well try to put as much to that tonight, so that you can put your presentation together that you need to put together.
Absolutely.
And, because if you put a presentation together and doesn't happen to go through for some reason, then you're stuck and we're not really getting a lot of it, accomplished with that, in my opinion, unless I'm not seeing how.
No, I agree. We should work on the 190 because that's a guarantee. And if there's any extra things for, guarantees of that we can go for debt exclusion or otherwise, but we have to figure out what we want to do with that 190 before we even get to that stage.
Right, those are just kind of thrown down
Right.
on that as a idea down the road, whether it happens or not, that's certainly, at that point basically really up to those departments if they want to pursue that route for, at that point. But as far as the 190, we really should do what we've been challenged to do and try to get that moving, at least moving forward so that we don't have to. So basically outside of that can really be done at any time. It's not really a timeline on those rest of the items as far as the 190.
True. And we can always add a supplemental report as we find out.
Right.
Additional ARPA funds start to flow, that
Right, and
everything will be contingent on.
And realistically, as long as it's come before this committee,
Yes.
which these have, then at that point, the ARPA funds of that could be spent however the board or the town administrator chooses to. They're really not based off of the capital recommendations at that point. They're purely based off of the funds that are available, so. I see Justice got his calculator out.
Yeah, just in case we get to that. We may get there.
That's a good thing.
I'll start with one thing. I'd like to make a motion out of the 190 that we put forward, the police cruiser. That's been something that we've seemed to have done each year as part of the program. Even when we were talking about potentials on leases, at least I had thought that put that forward as a direct purchase out of the 190. Seems to happen each time. It's including a $5,000 trade-in.
And there's also the Green Communities
Yeah, and
Initiative
that's
funding
that's
tied to it,
5,000
yep.
Greens community.
So that becomes a use it or lose it dollar amount.
So I think that 49 would be a vehicle that community needs. It's a replacement thing. It's kind of a replacement plan that we can move forward with. So I'd like to start with possibly on that.
Are you making a motion on that?
Yes, I'd like to make that.
All right, I'll second it.
A motion made and seconded to move forward with the outright purchase of the police vehicle and include the Green Community Grant funds tied to that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. That is item 1 on our list of proposed items. Mr. Graves.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
I vote yes as well.
Yeah, I know. We have a little over 140,000 left.
Well, my next question is kind of to the two of you, because I've kind of put it forward and brought it to the table, I think. Where do the two of you stand on possibilities on leases? Because that's going to make, again, a huge difference on whether we can put projects forward or whether they're going to sit there and not ever be brought forward because we don't have the money.
I absolutely agree with that thought process. The 6-wheel dump truck for highway, the small dump truck for buildings and grounds, and the forestry truck for fire. And if we tally all 3 of those,
All three of those would add up to about $104,889.73 approximately.
Again, these numbers are not hard as fast.
No, and that's correct.
I believe you used the phrase Sesame Street math.
Yes,
last
yeah,
time,
I, you know
which-
what, I'm not
Yeah,
a,
oh, I agree, I agree. It was an estimate, which is something to move forward with. Would you like to propose that as a motion?
I would like to put that forward as a motion, yes.
Which items were those again?
10,
Item
14,
10.
and 26.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Motion on the table. Mr. Graves is thinking.
I know, because I said, like, I agree, some of these need to be, I'm just not sure what level of, because I'm looking at these not just as, oh, this is a one-time thing, I'm looking at these as recurring expenses over 5 years automatically. Granted, they're not gonna necessarily be 5-year leases, we don't know what that will end up shaking up when it goes up to the fourth level and the town administrator makes his recommendations, but
Certainly understand, appreciate that. And I will echo Mr. Smith's comments that this is a little more palatable and it gives us a little more leverage to fill a few of these voids versus the outright purchase, which would pretty much take what's remaining.
And some of them would just sit on the table forever because
right,
they just would never be.
yeah, like the forestry truck is,
And same with,
that thing would not come off the table.
and the 6-wheel dump truck may not either. I think that was actually,
That was a big item.
yeah, that was 247. Yep. So it was, and it's unfortunate, and I think it's a lot more palatable, and I also think that going forward, it gives you a target to plan for, maybe the following year, as part of another business comes into town as part of somebody's pilot program. Or maybe it comes forward that, that they assume the remainder of this lease, or they incur the costs and they go from doing SCBA's or someone does to doing something different. But at least you know the target to give these people, the target to give to the taxpayers. And you know how to plan that into your upcoming budgeting years. To constantly have an item that is never going to come off a list, I think it kind of defeats the purpose of any type of capital planning, because there's no planning going forward. It's just, unless you roll it over every year and you go 3-4 years with
Right,
nobody getting anything.
all right, I'll second the motion on the table. I mean, not on the table, on the floor.
Oh, it's sitting at the table.
Let's not have a repeat of town meeting.
So we do have a motion to proceed with the lease to purchase plan on the highway vehicle, the dump truck for buildings and grounds, and the forestry truck for the fire department. Any further discussions? Hearing none, we'll call that to a vote. Mr. Graves,
Yes,
Mr. Smith,
Yes,
I vote yes as well.
What was that total you came up with, Justice?
$104,889.73. All right, we have about $35,967.35 to allocate. Mr. Chair,
Mr. Graves,
I would make a motion to recommend to the select board item number 30, from the fire department, the gear dryer. I think
that is a outright purchase for item
Yeah.
30.
an outright purchase.
Any further discussions?
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. recommendation to commit $11,000 for the gear dryer for the fire department. And this gives them the ability to fully support the unfunded mandate of the cancer initiatives and the programs tied with that.
And it finishes what we had voted on last year before and what got passed in town meeting.
Yes.
So,
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. Mr. Graves,
yes,
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
I vote yes as well.
On number 9, on the Heroes Park, I know they had talked about the possibility of funding source being maybe CPC or Light and Water donate as a donation. Did any more come forward on that? Do we know? I know they had at one point talked about it.
one of the issues with CPC was that they were going to have a meeting on it, but they've been struggling with quorums recently at meetings. They couldn't even vote on it. I don't know when their last meeting was or if anything had happened at that point. I have not looked at the minutes of Light and Water for a little while, so I don't know if that got put forward, but I know one of the commissioners had supported it. But I know specifically for CPC, it was an agenda item that totally got, they just didn't have enough people to even hold that meeting.
I have heard nothing either way. It's a great question.
Because looking at some of the other projects, that's one that potentially may not be a infrastructure possibility, maybe, I don't, depending on what we use things for funds down the road. So it may be something that's possibly considered under our
Yeah, I mean, that might,
funds, which if they could use ARPA funds for it, then it could then go back into the amounts.
Right.
right. So that's the thing about knowing the number on Heroes Park, this makes this difficult to even.
Right. No, I agree. And I think that $12,000 is a very rough estimate.
Yeah.
I do believe when this was presented to the select board and discussed it before it was kicked over to us to look at and review capital, that money, there were monies obligated, but there was not enough to close the project. So it was bumped up to 12,000, should be sufficient to get through the surveyor and architect work. That was my understanding.
So that was more of a ceiling that was put forward than,
Yes.
And the town administrator had said that last time I asked him that he believes between the CPC and the Light and Water that it would be covered, but I don't think there was a definitive answer.
Correct. That was how I understood it. It's still sitting
Yeah.
open-ended. And I can certainly understand and appreciate if a board or commission or committee cannot maintain, achieve a quorum, we can't take any actions.
I mean, later in this meeting, we can always put that forward and specifically motion that it should be a non-taxpayer funded expense through CPC and Light and Water and just see what happens, because there's other projects on here
Right.
that need to go into.
We can certainly do that right now as well.
and it doesn't, we don't even have to name those two. We could just put through some type of alternative source. And
Right.
and leave it as a.
So if that's what we want to do, I would make a motion to recommend to the board item number, where is it on my list here? Item number 9, through alternate funding sources.
I'll second that.
Motion duly made and seconded. Any further discussions? Hearing none, we'll bring that to a vote for item 9, the Heroes Park Freedom Park. Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
I vote yes as well.
So the running amount that we have left is about $24,967.35. So what is one more or possibly two more things that we can do here?
That's a list of projects that we already checked off, so I know where we are roughly.
I'm doing the same.
Well, I guess realistically, there's not a lot of projects that are remaining that
Are under 24,000. The only one I can see that actually jumps out at me is item number 15, which is town hall parking lot phase 1 repairs. That's under, or item number 17, because both of those are easily under the 24,900. But anything else on this list?
my only thing with the those two repairs with the parking lots is with that, again, where I think it potentially is something that is going to, or could go forward as using the infrastructure funds that realistically would be able to use and do all those, which we get a better deal through a paving company going out to bid if we're doing multiple parking lots, as well as purchasing the pavement for multiple projects at the same time. And if we hit one of them and then next year do another one, and
Or if we do like 5 bids at the exact same time, then yeah.
right, I think we potentially could be doing, we could get more bang for a buck on that.
And it'd be more efficient.
And the other thing too is, in looking on what we have remaining, I mean, we've been given, 190, that's not saying we have to put 190 forward to
Right.
in the report, because there is going to be some additionals on the leases that could give the treasurer an ability to negotiate whether it's a 5-year lease is better, whether a 4-year lease would be better. Maybe the term is, maybe instead of it being, 46, maybe it comes to be, whatever, it's a few $1,000s more, but at least there's a little leeway, and we haven't pigeonholed the amount right to the T. And especially where we don't know what
But that's going to start to look like.
right, what we actually, if we're gonna be able to use those funds, those projects definitely, if you do them all at
That's
once, would be cheaper. Same with almost the same as the kitchens. You get 2 kitchens technically on there, which realistically could be, you may not necessarily do both projects at the same time, but you could purchase goods and services. You could purchase goods for 2 kitchens at the same time and get potentially better prices on doing it if that's coming out of, whether it comes out of infrastructure, whether it comes out of down the road, a future article, whether it comes down, but gives we might be able to really combine some of those and still make just make it a little bit more money for getting more for what we're paying for.
Capitalizing on the power of bulk purchasing.
Yeah, I mean,
And then there's the other issue too, where we're putting all of these projects forward now. And they're not going to get purchased fully or go out until probably sometime in June or July of next year. So that means that all of these prices that we're talking about, especially because of just how crazy it's been in the market with anything that has a computer in it, it's probably best if we have a couple $1,000s of padding. Not that I necessarily like that, but because we don't want to appropriate something, and this could go before the board at any time, where the town administrator can make a different recommendation. These items could, upon reevaluation, oh, look, it's going to cost $1,000 or $2,000 more because we've gone into next year, and lo and behold, inflation's gone up again.
well, that's why a lot of the ones I put forward, I still, what I put forward, all of those, I left like a $12,000 amount still in the capital planning for, who knows if vehicles are crazy. We'll put 3 of them forward, and it's something that may, 4 of them actually. Some vendors will lock in their prices if you on a quote, but not a lot of them at this point. And I think they're all pretty much, at least the ones I've dealt with recently on a few of the larger items, they're telling you right off the bat, you're looking at a 7% increase after January or after February, so. And unfortunately, even if it goes forward to capital, until things pass on town floor, department heads aren't able to really say, okay, I'll place the order,
And vehicles especially, even if we get state bid pricing, we don't know what that is yet, because
right, even that.
they haven't even started to negotiate those for the next fiscal year. So this is always the tough part, looking where we're at now, where we're going. And I believe it is prudent to keep some monies held back, so
Yes.
we can make adjustments
And I think
appropriately.
as far as the other, things like different articles and that I had suggested previously, they were more suggesting to show that we have a potential plan
Potential.
moving forward.
Yep.
That we're not just putting forward a capital plan on what we got in front of us, that we're actually looking as a board as a committee to move forward. And I think, whether those ever come to fruition, I'm doing it that way, or whether a department head takes it as a possibility and says, in the spring when when town administrator goes out and asks if anyone has any articles looking to put forward, at least it can go to the board and it can go to the TA and it can be brought up potentially at that time. Or maybe some of them could go forward as, infrastructure projects, especially the bridges and those, items that are. So I think a lot of the department heads didn't necessarily expect to get everything that they put forward, but they're doing their job by putting it forward and laying a roadmap out for what they're gonna need to run the department and to help the town. It's our job to kind of navigate through that roadmap for them with the town.
And without knowing where we're at, sometimes it's a little difficult to gauge where we're headed to. We can have a plan, but we really need to know what's our base and how are we going forward. So we have a good base in front of us at this point.
What do we have remaining? You said?
It's not a lot. It's 24,967.35.
I'd like to make a motion that we leave the remaining as rolling over for the capital, whether it is used towards the adjustments on it, or whether it's used, and like I said before, we don't have to use everything. And set some aside. And next time maybe there's a bigger project that you can add that to if you don't need to use it. Or if we can, obviously, I think some of the other projects certainly should go forward, but it's just a question of, I hate to see us try to piecemeal something together to the point where it's not gonna.
Right. I mean, last year when we made recommendations, we went over the amount. This time we know all of these numbers are gonna skyrocket in terms of what this is gonna cost. They'll probably need, some of this will need an additional appropriation at a fall town meeting, I hope not, but God willing, that's what we've been seeing a few times lately, and that's what happened a few times, what just happened at the last fall town meeting, so I don't expect anything different.
I think it's doing a good budgeting and good planning to say, okay, we can get it out of here if we have to.
Right, plus we've done so well with actually making sure that we replace things on the schedule for the past several budget cycles, that now we're at the point where we're just picking apart really one-time projects that aren't going to pop up again in the next 10 to 15 years. So I would recommend that we don't do anything with the rest of the free cash allowance that we could give them.
I wouldn't see an issue with, if in the future it comes, once the definitives are out from the ARPA funds, that we could again vote on putting something forward, because although we're putting it forward now for capital planning, when it comes to projects that are being used for the ARPA funds, really capital planning wise, we don't need to put things forward any sooner than the time to put an article on town floor, realistically. I mean, in time to go to the boards and to the TA and to
Right. And that's, I know that I had a conversation with, where I asked a question between the town administrator and the town accountant the other day. Not necessarily does every ARPA expense have to go to town for.
Correct.
So it's really, it'll be a lot more of a shorter timeline for us to be able to get things out and to get projects actually out to bid or actually rolling when we actually get the go ahead of, okay, this is the plan moving forward, but right now we're just throwing darts blindly.
Or if we see that, this won't, a certain project won't fall into using the ARPA funds for it, then we could, move forward that we recommend to the board putting a separate article on for this item at that point.
Right, and at that point, we can know what to use for free cash and what not to use for free cash.
I think we, these items have made a good start out of it. It still gives, gives the treasurer, it gives Adam some leeway on how they adjust what we have put forward. And we're not trying to piecemeal those big projects that we could save money on by doing all at once, I think.
The only, so I don't know if we want to make a motion on just leaving the rest of that 24,900, but the other two things that I think we should motion on are with regards to the sewer department's roof. I know the commissioners have said they wanted to do it, but they put it forward to us and it's going for retained earnings. So is that something we want to motion through as something from an alternate funding source just to get that procedurally through?
Yeah, probably both of those projects. it sounds
Yeah,
like
both of those projects because,
could do.
Alternative funding.
right, the
sources,
alternative
yes.
funding. So,
I don't know if, I think we had a motion on the floor.
Yeah, we did have a
I'll withdraw my motion on that as far as the amount, because I don't think, the more I think about it, we probably don't actually need to make a motion on the amount to leave. We just don't spend it.
yeah, we just, yeah, I don't think,
So we wouldn't need a motion on that. So I'll withdraw.
okay. So, I would make a motion to recommend to the board of the select board, the senior center kitchen project and for the sewer department, the roof replacement design coming out of alternate funding sources.
I'll second that.
Motion duly made and seconded on the two late submissions due to the fact they have the potentials of the alternate funding sources, that we go ahead and we move forward and recommend approval of both. Any further discussions? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Yeah, a lot of questions, a lot of the big question mark, and if the crystal ball was a little bit clearer, would know what's going on with the ARPA. And I really hate to flog that dead horse, but until we get a little stronger guidance and some suggestions, and then we find out, honest to goodness, what's coming our way. I'm not going to call it a windfall, because at the end of the day, it's federal tax dollars as well, but it's something coming into us that is not being impacted and affected by our immediate municipal tax base. So it does fall outside of our direct taxpayer expenses.
So basically what we've done so far then, that should, as far as you putting together your presentation and what you, in your report.
Yeah.
I think we've done, as far as moving forward for you, I think a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of items on here that are potential for ARPA infrastructures. And we have potential alternate funding sources. We just need to see how much of that gets unlocked, which is easy enough to put into.
I think the only other thing on this list that we have not, that we actually could talk about and just procedurally make a motion on is item number 2, for the bathrooms and concession stand. That was already appropriated funds, but it's being presented to us so that the architect is going to go forward and make designs on the concession stand. I don't know if we wanted to make a motion and put that through. Because there's already a Gilman Wade appropriation in $10,000 to start that. And we were presented with just that. This is just to start the project to see what it's going to eventually cost, to then put that forward either next year or at another time.
Well, if that's already previously been appropriated, then
Yeah, maybe we don't have to do anything. Or
well, we can move it through us to put the project,
Right.
continue on using the previously appropriated funds.
And just move it forward.
all right. I've made a few motions. Who wants to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we continue to move that forward with the contingency that's going using previously appropriated funds.
All right, I'll second that.
Motion on the floor with a second for item number 2, the bathrooms concession stand at the Gilman White Park. And again, we have monies previously appropriated and allocated sitting. This is one of my big pushes as a member of the select board, is all these various projects that have been sitting there open-ended forever, and it's time to start buttoning these up, closing them, getting them to the across the finish line, and get them off of these ledgers. So any discussions I would have, any further discussions?
Yeah, actually, not on the bathrooms.
So hearing none, we'll call for the vote for the, to move item 2 forward. Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? Yes. And I vote yes as well.
My only other question is now the remaining, do we need to put in the form of a motion, the remaining numbers that we'll reevaluate once we know what projects could be funded by ARPA? How do we want to, or do we just leave those kind of hanging in limbo? What would be the,
I know they just sort of hang on the list and then
Yeah.
sometimes they get represented, sometimes. they
okay, so we can just kind of wait and see.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just sort of a
Yep,
wait and see.
and we'll just flag, when I do my report, I'll flag the remaining numbers here as the potential alternate funding sources. And we're just awaiting the further guidance and the further releases of numbers coming down to us from the state, ultimately through the federal government to the state to us. And just, it's a slow and arduous process.
It is.
Since they call us a non-entity unit because we're less than 35,000 population, it has another layer of bureaucracy and red tape that we unfortunately cannot get around it. I would love to say, sure, let's make it go away and just hand us the money, but it doesn't work that way.
Very good.
Any further discussions?
So for the report, you're probably gonna want this spreadsheet, but in the 23 column, what we put forward. So I can work on just with what we've motioned through, just updating that and sending it to you.
And we got the minutes from the last one. You'll have the minutes that you put together on what we move forward for.
Yeah.
Alternate funding sources already.
Yes.
Yeah,
So you'll be able to put all that. in your-
yeah, Holly has that written down too, so we'll
Well,
cross-check our notes. Is there anything else that you're gonna need in terms of our support for the report that we're gonna submit?
No, I think we've covered the big items and we've checked off as many of the boxes as we can check.
So you had said you wanted to meet before the select board's meeting so that we could just formally approve the report before we present it. Is that what I heard
That's
here?
one possibility. Yes.
just a note on that. I know with TCTV, they need a hard close a half hour before another meeting to get things ready for the next meeting. So if we are to do that, probably should be 5:30 to 6. And then we'll have to close the meeting and they have a half hour to prepare for the select board meeting.
Do we have to do do we have to do it on TCTV if it's a one? Just
Yeah.
approving the report?
To meet open meeting law, yes, we do.
And you can decide that later, but just
We-
to
we
let you know, it would be 5:30 to 6, so we should do it. And do you know when will the report be ready for me to put in the packet for the board
I am
tomorrow, or is that
hope-
gonna rush it?
I am hoping to have everything by Friday.
Okay,
If I can go back and figure out how I discombobulated the spreadsheet I was working on.
okay.
I can send it to you again too, if that other one will help you.
That might be very helpful.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I am the first to admit, I am not an expert in Excel. I can run an Access database all day long. Excel, it kind of trips me up when I get into some of the formulas. And that's what I did. I deleted the cell and lost the formula and it just trashed everything. Oopsie.
All right, unless we have something else and there's nothing else on the agenda,
There is nothing else on the agenda.
I will make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Any discussions? We will call for a vote. Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
I vote yes as well.